Well, thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. I would like to thank very much for the invitation, for being here, for the great reception. I imagined before coming to Vancouver that Vancouver was a very beautiful city, and as far as I've been here, I can say that it's really a very beautiful city with very warm reception from the people that live in Vancouver, so it's very good to be here. I want also to apologize for my English. I hope you can understand me. My English in the morning is terrible. Actually, in the afternoon is even worse. So the time of the day doesn't make any difference, but I'll put my best efforts in order to make you able to understand the ideas I'm going to share with you in this morning. I came from Curitiba. I guess this is the main reason why I'm here. Despite the fact that I work at SEBRAE, that is a very important institution in Brazil that is spread all over the country, giving support for SMEs development. We've been doing this job for 40 years now, and we've helped millions of small and medium enterprises in Brazil over this time. We also help people to find the entrepreneurship spirit within them. We have a very important program also called Empretech in Brazil, and everywhere I go, I have the pleasure to find people who have taken this course. I've already found one here, a colleague from Brazil that has done this program, and everybody says basically the same thing, that Empretech is a program that changes their lives because it helps them to find how they can have a life that is more entrepreneur, and this makes a lot of difference. But besides that, the most important thing for our panel this morning is the fact that I came from Curitiba, as long as it's a panel about sustainable cities. Curitiba, actually, I got really surprised when I went to look for the prizes that Curitiba had won in the last couple of years. I had no idea that Curitiba had won so many prizes. So in this slide here, next one, please. Okay, you have an idea about these prizes. Model City for Sustainable Development and a reference in Green Economy, United Nations, Global Green City Award at Rio +20, Global Award Sustainable City, Greenest City in Latin America, only city in Latin America to be appointed as one of the 10 cities with the better perspectives in sustainability. And what is interesting to think, and I was talking with some people that I've met before our panel started also, is to think what have we done and how this was possible in a not so big city in south of Brazil. Curitiba has more or less the same size as Vancouver. We have almost 2 million people living in Curitiba, and if we get the metropolitan area of Curitiba, we get to 3.5 million people living there. How is possible that we have done this job? Well, first of all, it's not something that started a couple of years ago. This work started like 30 years ago when Jaime Lerner, that I guess most of you have heard about it, was the mayor of Curitiba. And the main secret, if I had to summarize in one sentence, next one please, I would say that is because since the time that Jaime Lerner was the mayor, people came first. It was in the slide before this one. But every politics that is implemented in Curitiba puts people as the most important part of the equation. We see many cities around the world thinking about how can they put more cars in the street, how can they find more space for real estate, for buildings and things like that. But in Curitiba, since the early 70s, everything that has been done in the city thinks about putting people in the first place. And this slide here, that is my last slide, has some of the projects that were implemented along this time. So I guess many of you have heard about the BRT transportation system in Curitiba. That is the system that transports people in buses that roads on their own roads, exclusive ways for buses that nowadays is used in more than 8 cities around the world. It's a system that transports more or less the same amount of people as the subway usually does, but costs 10% of what an implementation of a subway costs. It's very effective. It has those tube stations that probably most of you have heard about that were also created by Jaime Lerner, and it's a very effective system. Since the early 80s, we have garbage separation processes in all over the city. Curitiba is nowadays the city in the world that has the larger percentage of garbage that is recycled. I guess that around 70% of all the garbage in Curitiba is recycled nowadays. Since the time where cities were trying to find more space for more cars in the street, Curitiba started creating pedestrian streets. Instead of putting more cars to transport people, we took the cars out of the central regions of the city, for example, and made those streets exclusive for pedestrians, making the space available for the people. We have green exchange programs that is a kind of form to incentive people and children, especially low-income people, to recycle garbage. If they bring their garbage separated, ready for recycling, they can exchange this by material for school of the children, for example. Curitiba is the city in the world, one of the cities in the world with the largest green area per habitant. We have 52 square meters per habitant. That is 4 times the recommendation of United Nations. And this is mostly because of the network of public parks that we have. That, besides being a public space for people to enjoy, it's also a strategy to contain flood. In the early 80s, Curitiba had a problem with flooding areas. When the rain came, the rivers that run through and around the city flooded many areas of the city. So instead of building very expensive barriers for containing the rivers, we decided to use the rivers actually to build lakes and places where the population could make good use of these lakes and beautiful parks and lots of green areas. Almost in the end, we also use, and this is part of the job that I do in my company, we also use entrepreneurship as a strategy to make Curitiba more sustainable, helping to build and create sustainable small businesses, small business that thinks in a green way. And for example, we have stories of the recuperation of degraded areas in the city center that were areas that were taken by prostitution and drugs, and that nowadays, after we implement programs, not only to make the restoration of those areas, but also to increase the commerce and entrepreneurship in those areas, working together with the entrepreneurs in those areas. The real estate in those areas now worth 3 to 4 times what they worth like 4 or 5 years ago. And finally, we believe that one of the reasons why Curitiba is so successful in their strategies to being sustainable is the fact that sustainability is something that the children learn at the school. The children effectively teach their fathers, their parents, how to be green, how to be sustainable. I have personal stories about that, like for example, one day I have a 10-year-old son. One day I was in the street with him, we got some candies after lunch in a restaurant, and like distracted, I put a candy in my mouth and I dropped the paper on the street. He fighted very hard with me. What are you doing, Dad? You cannot do that. Go there and get the paper from the floor. This is the kind of education that our children gets in the school. So they literally teaches the oldest generation how to be green and how to be sustainable. So these are my opening remarks, and we are going to have the opportunity to discuss some of these initiatives in more detail soon. Thank you.